Thank you so much for being here, Kenneth, and it is an honor to have you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. The honor is mine to be called from such a faraway place as Taiwan.
So we are going to discuss the residential school cases in Canada today. And my first question will be, what is the relationship between your experience as an Indigenous day school student and your work related to Indigenous residential school and the struggle for justice for Indigenous people in Canada?
There's a very, very close relationship to, I guess, to the school system and myself, because I'm a victim of the school system. I never went to residential school because residential schools, they took the children away and set them far away to the schools to be away from their parents and their culture and their language, and were punished if they tried to speak their language, and they tried to eradicate the culture of our people. There was also the day school system, which was the schools were in our community, and but the curriculum objective was the same. I don't speak the language, so that's what the elder meant about me being incomplete. I couldn't understand the nuances of our teachings, of our culture, and that's what makes me today an incomplete person. And I guess I tried to make up for it by being very, very more active in the international level, national level here, local level, to try to take control of education away from the government, that we control and run our own schools. I became more involved at the international level to fight for the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, to fight against genocide, the elimination and the eradication of Indigenous peoples.
You've been involved with the UN Indigenous Rights Declaration for more than 30 years. What do you think explains Canada's vote against this? And do you think the declaration is relevant to the residential school issue?
I think the world is realizing now that Canada hasn't been that perfect. I think the residential school and the unmarked graves that have been discovered has raised the issue of Canada's behavior at international level. In my opinion, the church, the Catholic Church, has to rescind the papal bulls that revoke. I use about a stronger word. They must revoke the papal bulls that made up the doctrine of discovery, which is what Europeans, kings, used to claim North America and the other parts of the Americas and Australia, New Zealand, and other colonized areas of the world. The papal bulls basically said that if you discover a new land and the people that are already there, if they're not Christian, then you can claim that land for yourselves, saying that we as Indigenous people, we don't have a right to the land, and we have no more rights than the animals that were living there. And this is the fundamental root of the dispossession of Indigenous peoples, the disempowerment of Indigenous people. And the residential schools system was a way of enforcing that dispossession. So the residential schools go back to that, to the doctrine of discovery and the papal bulls. There's a line of a rationale for the elimination of Indigenous people, that going back to that. I want to make it very clear that the purpose of the residential schools was to eradicate Indigenous people. Why did they want to eradicate us? Because we are the original owners of the land. It's all about land. As long as Indigenous people exist, Canada can't say, well, this is our land or their land. It's the Indigenous peoples, that's our land. And so that so there is this I guess, a feeling of guilt maybe by Canada, or the understanding that they can't really claim territorial integrity over all of Canada as long as there's Indigenous people here. So you eliminate the Indigenous people, then Canada can say, well, look, the original people are gone now. They don't exist anymore, so therefore there's no challenges to the territory of Canada. So that's what it's all about, land. It has been that conflict between the settlers from Europe when they came here was always been about land and national resources, beaver pelts, fish, all of these kinds of I guess wealth that we had has been the conflict between Indigenous peoples and the settlers.
Is there any possibility that the indigenous movement and transitional justice will make a further progress after the recent discovery of unmarked graves of indigenous children at the residential school sites?
I think that after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report came out, is that with the 94 calls to action, I think there has been a change. There has to be more change, mind you, and the unmarked graves have risen. Those 94 calls to action to a higher level, and now there has been, but even before the graves were found, there has been an impact. You'll see, in particular in education institutions, you're seeing more universities adding Native studies or indigenous studies onto their program. They're hiring more indigenous professors to teach. There's more, there's some, indigenous people have been better organized, and the schools and government institutions, municipalities, cities have been acknowledging that they're on indigenous land, and those acknowledgements are important. They're a little piece of the of reconciliation. So there has been a lot of things that have happened since the calls to action. And I also want to really point out the brilliance of the report. The report didn't make recommendations because the Truth and Reconciliation, the commissioners said that recommendations just sit on a shelf. We're not making recommendations. We want action, and that was brilliant. It forces governments and institutions into action, and not just words. It's not, of course, a long way to go yet. I mean, there's more that has to be done, but it has had an impact.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. It was such a pleasure to have you.
Celui-là, celui le dernier âgé en haut, là, c'est lui du milieu. Ça, c'est moi, ça. J'ai des souvenirs ici. C'est ici que j'ai devenu quelqu'un d'autre.
弗雷德是加拿大原住民寄宿学校的幸存者，他的创伤与阴霾随着学校遗址内上千具的骸骨重见天日，又再度被翻搅上来。
The pain is too deep in our hearts, in our minds, in our bodies.
Ça va faire partie de notre vie, tout au long de notre vie.
19世纪时，加拿大当局认为原住民应该接受基督教和欧洲文化，采取了一系列的教育措施，让原住民孩童从小离开部落，强制性的入住寄宿学校，被迫和双亲分离。如果反抗，孩童的父母会被起诉跟判罪。
Rendu ici au pensionnat, j'avais plus de nom. J'avais un numéro. J'avais le numéro 70.
On se faisait laver la peau avec des brossiers, parce qu'ils disaient qu'on était sale. C'était brun, c'était pas sale.
在寄宿学校内，原住民儿童被强制剃发，不准说母语，不准信仰原生宗教，羞辱、殴打、严厉体罚，甚至性侵。
La deuxième année, vers la moitié de l'année après les fêtes, là ça a commencé les abus, des attouchements. Quand on prenait notre douche, lui était là, puis il nous regardait, puis mettons, le soir, t'en vas te coucher, ben là, tu l'attends marcher d'une manière, là, que tu sais que c'est lui qui s'en vient.
À un moment donné, ça a été un abus carrément. Pénétration pendant que j'étais assis sur lui. Il m'a baissé les pantalons, puis ça a été vraiment ça. Là. Puis quand je suis retourné dans ma chambre, je pense que cette journée-là, j'avais resté tout seul toute la journée couché. J'avais trop mal. J'avais de la misère avec mes fantômes, puis
许多孩童因病去世，甚至也有受不了的小孩自我了断，而活下来的人一生都难以摆脱过去的阴影，很难回归正常生活。
Dans l'alcool, la violence, tout m'a suivi.
je vivais mal ma sexualité. J'étais pas capable d'avoir une caresse d'une femme qui... J'étais pas capable. J'aimais pas qu'on me touche le corps.
2021年5月，超过1300具无名冢被挖掘，黑暗的历史被再度掀开，举国舆论沸腾。但在事件当下，天主教教宗并没有表态。一直等到2022年的4月1日，也就是整整1年后，罗马天主教教宗方济各终于松口，为过去100年来教会寄宿学校的虐待丑闻致上迟来的歉意。
Réconciliation, je vois pas comment qu'on peut le faire. Si le pape vient, c'est qui vient, s'il veut venir, moi, ça change rien.
J'aimerais que le pape vienne s'excuser devant nous autres. Le pape, c'est le chef suprême de l'Église catholique. Ça va tourner une page.
道歉是否可以弭平历史暴力的伤痕，还未可知。但至少打开了和解与对话的契机，正是过去的错误，不再重蹈覆辙。
Do I feel like a survivor? No. I feel like a victor. I feel like I won. I feel like that they couldn't take the Indian out of me.